All right.
Surprise. Surprise.
I've been sitting out here in this parking lot for minutes, and as soon as it gets to 0-0, some guy decides to set his car alarm off. What is even happening right now? This is like, so I've just decided that this is my office right now. This is it. This is what it is. We're just going to do this in cars across the country. We have karaoke in cars across the country. Jerry Seinfeld's doing conversations with people in cars across the country. I'm just sitting with you in every parking lot in America right now. I'm in Georgia right now. I'm in a parking lot in Georgia. Beautiful spot. The beach is right there. I watched the sun come up. My wife and my daughter are in the room right now, but I didn't want to wake them up because I'm relatively loud. So I'm sitting in a car ready to do this whole thing. Beautiful beach, but where am I? I'm in a parking lot, Jimmy. I'm in a parking lot.
Oh my God. I'm actually starting to wonder, like, I need to do a little investigation. I'm going to have to try to figure out, do you actually have a home, Joe?
Listen, you better watch your mouth right there. I do have a home. I've been in it a couple times. I don't need this from you. I don't need this from you. I'm out here trying to be a good guy, not waking my daughter and my wife up right now. And you're out here slamming me for thinking I don't have a place to live? I do, Jimmy.
I'm going to do a little research and see if I can figure out who your father-in-law is.
You have to do that.
I'm going to ask him, does Joe use your house sometimes?
Listen. We don't need that. I don't need that, man. I don't need it. But man, I just had a chance to talk to some superintendents in Georgia yesterday, 2 days ago. Now that I think about it, and it was great. It was a group of people, like a regional agency came together. 3 regional agencies came together. So I got a chance to talk to about 75 people in the room, district leaders, about how we can lead in a different capacity and create some momentum for. And I said to him, like, man, I'm just going to be honest. We're all about kids and we're all about schools, but for the next hour and a half, I guess we had them for 3 hours. For the next 3 hours, we're all about you, trying to build some momentum, because there's not a lot of people building momentum for us. So what can we do to take care of each other in these spots that end up being a really burnout spot? And the interesting thing, Jimmy, that we keep coming back to is we've both had a chance to go all over the place, and so incredibly lucky to do the work, and I mean, like, beyond lucky to do the work. But at the same time, we keep hearing some of the same things that happen in literally every school across the country, in every district across the country. And when you get these themes that keep coming back to how we can lead in a different capacity, but at the same time, we keep hearing the same things over and over again. Maybe it's about us really diving down to what those core 2-3 things are that we see happening everywhere, and what can we do to help them in doing that, because there's just so much of a theme to what goes on, and a lot of times it's, you please tell me if I'm wrong, and because I know you will, because you always do. Tell me if I'm wrong, but what I hear is that people are struggling. They're first of all, they're struggling with time and managing versus leading. That's one of the things that we hear a lot is, I don't have time to do this. I don't have time to do this. I don't have time to do this. The second thing I hear a lot is not being able to be part of the instructional leadership process, being in the classroom, seeing what instruction looks like, which kind of probably goes back to time, right? And the third thing is all of these factors that come from places that they can't control are impacting the people that they lead, and they don't know how to make the connection in terms of trying to help them in the moment while knowing all these outside factors are happening that they can't control, but they're also impacting what's going on in the classroom, in the school, because that's on the shoulders of all the people that we lead on a very regular basis. Those are 3 things that I hear very often. And I don't know if like I said, tell me if I'm wrong, or what did I miss when it comes down to those things?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I certainly agree with you on all those things, right? There's no doubt about that. I think you made a really good point to start is, and it's true, at least in my observation experience as well, and I think you and I have talked about this a lot, that regardless of where you go, the issues are the same everywhere, right? Because we believe, and this is the hard part for us, Joe, because that's the role we served in for so long, but almost all the issues that we deal with right now in schools really are leadership issues.
Yeah.
And I'm always careful to say that because people are like, you do know who your audience is today, right?
Right.
Right. But the truth of the matter is when we say leadership issues, everybody's a leader in the organization, right? We have to remember that. And that's why that's so important. And I think that's one of the areas. So there are kind of these 5 themes for me that keep coming over and over, and we can kind of chat about either individually or just in general. And then obviously with the audience today, thank you so much. We know it's an early Saturday morning.
We got people here. Did people show up?
There's actually people here watching, Joe.
You better stop it right now. I gotta get in there.
Carolyn's always here.
Carolyn's here.
Novar will be on some elliptical somewhere across the country in Texas or something. And no, we're grateful for that. But just the opportunity. But yeah, I mean, certainly if you have a thought, we'd certainly love for you to put that in the chat box. What are some of the things that you're struggling with? What are the same things maybe you're hearing or seeing as well as a leader? But I think there are 5 areas that I see that are always kind of the same issues wherever you go. Number one, regardless of the organization, there's always some sort of cultural or climate issue that's ongoing. So we're always looking at those cultural issues. A lot of those issues are around behaviors in the organization. Most of those by the adults, although adults love to look at the children's behavior. I think we need to spend more time focusing on our own behaviors as adults. I think we'll get better results on that. Number 2 is in the area of instructional leadership. I think you mentioned that already. That's absolutely true. I think that's one of the biggest struggles for a lot of us as leaders. We have really good intentions. We know the importance of getting in the classrooms. We know we have to do this, but we get caught doing a lot of management things. And when we get in that management, we just cannot get out of that fire. And then we feel guilty. And then we have all these other things going on. And we can talk about that one because that one's really one that's, I think, probably the biggest issue of all of them I'm dealing with. Probably, well, maybe with culture as well, but that managing, leading, and then the cultural aspect. Number 3 is the operational side. That's the management side, just how to manage all the things you got to manage as the building leader, right? And of course, we know that the larger the building, the larger the staff, just the more complex it gets in operations. It doesn't mean we don't deal with the same operational issues, but it does get more complex the larger the organization becomes. No different than a large district with, we were just in Gwinnett, right? 180,000 kids. You can't tell me that's not a nightmare to manage when you're dealing with an organization with 1,500 kids, right? So it's just, again, it's just more issues. Leadership development is a huge one. And I see this one a lot too. And how do we continue to grow the capacity, build our leaders? How do we grow and develop people? We've talked about this in the past episodes, onboarding, but all those things. But I think to me, that one's a lot of intentionality, just being really intentional and seeing things through the heart of a teacher, even as leaders. But because we all start our careers as teachers. So let's just keep teaching, right? That's the joy of the work, in my opinion. And the last one, which we often forget, but I think a lot of leaders really struggle with this. And this is one, I actually feel like this is the biggest one I think our leaders complain about in my experience, right? Again, I think leaders feel bad sometimes, right? I think it's a tribute to, the work that we do, that people feel that can trust us to share these things in private, where they really struggle. And one of those areas is just community engagement. How to get more parents involved, how to really partner with communities. And we get frustrated with that because we know we can't do this alone. And I think a lot of it, when I really dive into it to ask leaders, what is it that's frustrating you? I think the demands that are placed on schools today to address all of the issues that we're dealing with. And sometimes we feel that we're not getting the support that we need, whether it comes from, community resources, whether it comes from families and community and our businesses or whatever, obviously in terms of money, resources, et cetera. But I think that's an area that I see us continue to struggle. And so those 5 areas, again, are culture and climate, leadership or instructional leadership, operational, like in the management of the building, the facility, leadership development, and community engagement. So, I mean, those are the areas for me for the most part, Joe. But if the audience has something you want to throw in there as well, we can talk about that. If you guys want to jump in, if somebody has some ideas to support the other ones, even better. But it is Saturday morning. Joe, we got to move this to the evening because sometimes people say to us, I want to jump in, but I don't want to go on camera. Right. And, but look at Joe. Look at Joe. I mean, Joe, every time you come on, I have to think I said, look at him like, is that Adam Sandler? Who the hell is that? Adam Sandler?
Listen. I got a hat. I'm in Georgia. It's going to be 75 degrees out, and I got a hat on. There's just like this is essentially how my day works every day. It's just the way that it is. But you nailed it on all 5 of those, and the 3 that I mentioned, they're all intertwined in that. And I think a lot of times, like I said, a lot of the things that we can't control, we spend a lot of time thinking about the things that we can't control which really puts us in a tough spot for the stuff that we can control. Well, what if this happens? What if that happens? What if this happens? And as we think about all that stuff, the stuff that we could be doing that's right in front of us gets pushed off to the side because we're in anticipation of what could happen. And I think there's a balance that has to happen there as a leader, knowing and understanding that the funding may not come in the way that you want it to. The district or the state may decide that they're going to go in a direction that you don't particularly like, but you're going to have to lead people through that process. And when you look at it that way, then when you're thinking about all the things that could happen and not dealing with stuff that is right in front of you, that's where I think some of that time gets lost. And then when you're thinking about it, you spend that time in your office when we could be out kind of creating momentum in these spaces. And that's the hard balance, I think, because you have to think about those things that you can't control because they're going to have an impact on the people that are in your building. But at the same time, if that drives your day, then you're going to put yourself in a really difficult situation because you're thinking about stuff that may or may not actually come to fruition, and you're not dealing with the stuff that actually is right in front of you. I found that a lot, well, specifically during COVID and everything going on around that. And, but we also had, things that happened in the school district, that are things that I couldn't control, but I thought about them like we were sued in federal court, I thought about that every day, but I couldn't do anything about it at all. Actually, it was all the lawyers were taking care of all of the logistical stuff, but I thought about it every day, and it actually impacted how I walked through school because I kept thinking about it, and I kept thinking about what everybody else was going to say about it. And I was like, and until I got to the point where I found myself in more places with more kids and more teachers and more staff members, just being with them, then I stopped thinking about all that stuff. It was still there. And I got back to my office and I still remembered it was there because it didn't go away. But when you get back to why you do the work on a regular basis and you can actually see it, at least you're in the mix with everybody, right? I mean, that doesn't make the bad stuff go away, but at the same time, we got to control what we can control in these spaces. And a lot of times that's our behavior in these spots. And just like you said, when it comes down to culture and climate and the behavior of the adults in the space, like, what are we really doing? I mean, you're right. We can't always, and kids are kids, man. Like, they're not fully developed. They're going to make mistakes. They're going to do things that we don't like. And they're going to do things that are out of character, right? And it's easier to put ourselves in a spot where we can help the behaviors of the adults and the reaction to those things because we know and understand that they're going to happen. Control what we can control along the way.
Yeah, I'm looking at the questions, Joe, as you're talking or going through the comments, maybe they're comments and also questions and so forth. And again, and that's one thing I will repeat again that we always say, we certainly don't have an answer for these things too, right? I mean, these are very complex situations. It would be pretty disingenuous for Joe and I to say, well, here's this and here's that. I mean, obviously we have our thoughts, we have our experiences that we can talk about, but it would be, almost insulting to say to somebody, well, this is what you should be doing. Well, I've never been in your community, right? I don't know.
Right.
School or your culture, and we're certainly never would ever want to appear that we're that arrogant that we have these answers. We're just like everybody else in here having a conversation, but we're hoping that the comments that are shared, the comments that hopefully that we just share a comment that maybe makes you to reflect, to say, hey, let me relate that to my own experience and see if there's something there. The other truth of the matter is, Joe, you and I are a lot older in the game now too. We talked about this when we first started. I mean, certainly over the years we learned a lot from our mistakes or from our experiences. And one of those things I would say is this. I mean, Joe, you stay in this business long enough as a leader, you will get beat down.
Absolutely.
It doesn't matter. I don't care how good of a leader you are. The variable is so unpredictable that we deal with. We don't know what we're going to deal with. And we can do what we believe is the right thing, and somebody will think it's the worst thing we've ever done. And sometimes people are not very nice when you're in leadership, right? And again, if we have to reframe that a little bit and just look at it, it's because people, when they look at their own children and their experiences, they are everything to them. And if they see their children hurt, sometimes people want to lash out and make somebody feel just as hurt. Hey, you're going to do this to my family? It's the way we see things. So one thing I would say is this, and I believe, as I went through again, we all make a bazillion mistakes because we don't know what the hell we're doing sometimes, right? We're just doing the very best we can. We've said this before. We literally are handed the keys. So like, who's helping us, who's teaching us, who's coaching us, who's guiding us. And so we make mistakes. But one thing over the years that I feel like as I matured and evolved into the role, I felt like I kept getting more, my skin kept getting a little thicker, adding layers to that, because you do take a lot of hits. But one thing I think that really helped, and I think I got this actually from my mom, actually, I remember her sharing this with me, was because I was feeling pretty beat down, just like a lot of people, right? We question, we doubt. I don't know if I can keep doing this. Should I keep doing this? But I remember and she didn't say it exactly like this, Joe, because first of all, she said it in Spanish, but I did interpret it this way, is that sometimes you just have to walk towards the mess. And because I remember saying to her, like, I don't even want to leave my office. Like, I just don't want to leave my office right now. And then I didn't want to go to events, right? Because you almost feel like, I don't know, what's the word? Embarrassed, ashamed. I want to help, but I don't know how to help. I'm just tired. Whatever it is, right? And I just remember that. And so that's one thing I share with a lot of leaders today. Just walk towards the mess, because it's in those times that people need leadership at the most.
Yeah.
We need to be more visible than ever. And I think sometimes our natural tendency is to retreat a little bit. And I think we need to walk towards the mess, because the mess is always going to be there, right?
Yeah.
And so that's kind of one thing that I've always learned about that. And then, and so as I look at the comments here, like budget, for example, right? Budgets are one of those, and a couple people shared that, right? Like, this is the time of the year where, like, oh my God, what am I going to do? I just got the news at a meeting that we're going to have to cut $800,000 or whatever, right? And, it's not that I try to make light of it, but I do say this to educators. I mean, let's be honest. When was that year that we actually had enough money to do it? I just can't remember quite what year that was, but these things are real because they're real stressful, but we can already predict it. And again, I think the key always is I think leaders feel the responsibility to go back behind closed doors to try to figure these things out, whether it's a principal in APs, maybe it's central office, all a bunch of, administration trying to figure out these issues, when we should be going to our people and saying, look, here is our issue and we need some help. And so, because nobody wants to do the budget cuts. Obviously, nobody. I mean, who wakes up and go, I think let's cut $8 million and just piss off the whole world, right? Nobody wants to do that. So we have to have grace for everybody's. I mean, even central office or the board or whoever wants to not go through these issues, because it's stressful for them too. So the idea is, how do we come together and share what is that vision, and then how do we go from point A to point B, but together with everybody having a voice, being very transparent. But leadership in those moments is, what do I do when I don't know what to do? And that's how I see it. So I know there's a lot there, but that's just where my mind goes. I start thinking about all these things.
Well, a couple of things that hit me. The whole concept of walking into the mess is, I think, right on. But the other piece of it, what you mentioned, and I talk about this, and I know you do too. When you can find joy in the mess, it brings you back the next day feeling better about the mess, because the mess isn't going away. But if you can find some joy within the context of the mess and purpose within the context of the mess, it makes the mess at least bearable the next day. You don't feel like you're just getting beat down by the mess, right? So the more that we can see, the joy in the context of the mess, that's important. So, but the other thing that you mentioned, like when we talk about these connection or the budget pieces or the decisions that, we may or may not have an impact on. One of the things I think it's really important that has, I think, helped us, both of us in our spaces, and when we talk to groups, is the transparency that we show with the group that we lead impacts the response to the tough decisions that we have to make. Here's the caveat to that. We are in positions where we can't be fully transparent about the work, because there are some things that are said behind closed doors that can't be said in open spaces. So all of the interactions that we have with people, and it goes back to control what you can control. When you're transparent with the things that you can control, it gives you a little grace when things don't go the way that people want to with things that you can't control. So I think the transparency is really important to us, but also the consistency within the context of that. Our people every group that I've led, actually, our people would rather disagree with the decision than wonder where it came from. right? So if
Mhm.
we take them along on the journey and understand that at some point we're going to make a tough call, and that's our job as the leader in that space, is to make that tough call sometimes, then when we bring them along and have to make that tough call, if they know where it's coming from and they're informed along the way, they may be absolutely upset or disappointed, but they don't feel betrayed. And those are two really big, like, that's a big difference. You can be upset about something and not agree with it and not feel like you've been betrayed in the process. Because when you feel like you've been betrayed in the process, now all of a sudden it spawns a whole group of cultural issues in your building. But the first part, you can be upset about the decision and know where it came from. And then everybody's on the same page when it comes to, well, yeah, it sucks. I'm sorry. This is where we're at. As opposed to, well, why would you make that decision? That doesn't make any sense. Here, I got four other ideas for you that you should do before you do that. Right? Like that's the problem that we come into. And the more that we can be transparent in the process leading up to the decision, the better chance we have for the decision to be, I don't even want to say accepted, but understood on some level. Because there's sometimes it wouldn't be accepted, and that's okay too. That happens too. But the journey along, it's like when we talk about every interaction matters, right? Every interaction determines how people respond when something doesn't go their way. So if the only time that we've talked to them is when something doesn't go their way, they're going to respond substantially different than if we've been talking to them and our interactions with them are the world, like we're involved with them, we're ingratiating ourselves to what they do, because it's a whole different relationship when that tough decision is made, right?
Yeah. Joe, it's so funny. So for the people that are on today, thank you so much. That's awesome that so many people
Early.
are on and early. One of the things Joe and I always worry about, we're just being very vulnerable ourselves right here, is that, Joe, do you ever feel like we just talk about the same thing every week, right? And we kind of do sometimes. And this is why we kind of, Joe started kicked it off that way. It's like, hey, the issues are the same everywhere. But this is about culture and leadership, right? And these are cultural issues and they are leadership issues. And so that's why it kind of sounds the same sometimes, but it's a reminder again why the foundation, and Joe, and this is, I bet we've talked about this in a bazillion episodes, is the more you kept talking, I was waiting, and sure enough, you came right back to it. And all those things you were saying. So here's what I'm hearing. Number one, you start off with transparency.
Yeah.
Okay. That the transparent leader is an effective leader.
Right.
So why is that the case? Because we know transparent leaders, right, build this thing called trust.
Yeah.
Right? If people do not believe you're transparent, they think you're hiding something. You have an agenda, you know, more than what you're actually saying. They feel betrayed, whatever happens. So this is a trust issue. Then when we talk about trust, how do we build trust? You have to invest time in people to build those relationships. We say this a lot. We can't wait for a problem to happen and then go have the conversation, because we haven't built a relationship where these people or individuals in our organization might trust us. So we're just going to get better results. We're not saying this is right and this will fix all your problems. Again, people, we can't fix all the problems. That's not our responsibility, in our opinion. Our job is to bring the best versions of ourselves to these situations. And if we do, because we're focused on us and not everybody else, typically, again, there's always exceptions. Typically, though, you will get a better result. Okay. And we're about getting the best result that we possibly can, because we can't fix everything, because that's exhausting. Right. And so it comes back to that foundation of relationships to build that trust. And I think one of the keys here, and hopefully this is something to think about, is as a leader, the question we should maybe ask ourselves is this: have we, now because I'm focused on me, have we communicated the type of leader that we hope to be to our people? Why is that important? Number one, clarity, right?
Mm-hmm.
People are very clear of the individual or leader that I'm trying to be. Number two, therefore, I'm transparent, but I also know that I can't lead this school by myself. One of the five things we talked about at the beginning, we're building capacity. Well, if I know that, then I need to communicate the type of leader I'm trying to be, because I'm going to need their help, because we all need to be held accountable for our behavior. You know why? Because on any given day, all of us are going to behave in ways that are not great.
Exactly.
Because we're human, because we get tired, because we get frustrated, because we get exhausted, because we get beat up, and go on and on and on. But this is the way I think, Joe, I love, you and I have a bazillion conversations off camera about just leadership in general. But have we communicated the type of leader that we want to be? I want to be a transparent leader, people. So if you feel like I'm not communicating and being transparent, then let me know. And I need to surround myself with people who hold me accountable. Do I want to be a vulnerable leader? Great. If you want to be a vulnerable leader, then you need to be vulnerable sometimes. You can't just say I want to be a vulnerable leader and then not want to be vulnerable, right?
Mm-hmm.
Am I a leader who wants to lead with integrity? Am I a leader who wants to be visible, right? It doesn't matter. But the key is, are we communicating to our people the type of leader we want to be? So that way I can be held accountable to be the person I say I want to be, because that's the only way I can build trust. But I need to be transparent in that, because I then therefore need to build the relationships.
Yeah.
So hopefully at the end of the day, we just build a healthier culture.
Okay. Let's go back to that now, because like you said, we talk about this stuff every week, but I think what makes this different for us, and I don't know for everybody else, but for us, when we talk about it, is what are the action steps that we are putting ourselves in to create momentum for the leader that we want to be. Everything that you just said is right, but also everything you just said is what people struggle with, because they want to be everything to everybody. And when they say, I want to be this type of leader and this type of leader and this type of leader and this type of leader, it's like the press conference, man. You get to the press conference and the new coach comes in and we're going to create this culture and we're going to compete and we're going to make sure that, everything goes away. We're going to talk about it and we're going to be this and we're going to be that. And then you're like, a year later, you're like, well, what happened? Well, you know what? The team that you're playing against, they want to do that same thing too. So kind of clashes in the middle, right? All this stuff is like, I think the problem that we have, and I did it too. I wanted all the momentum posters, right? Like I wanted all the phrases, I wanted all the sayings, I wanted them all on the wall. I'm going to be this guy. I'm going to be that guy. I'm going to be the like, let's take a couple coach quotes, throw them up. I'm going to be that. Like, this is what we do, because they motivate us. But when we spread them out and we want to be all things to all people, now we can essentially be none of those things to any of them, because we're trying to be too many things. When you go back, and the idea that you talk about a lot, which I love, is when you go back to your core values of who you are as a leader, not only going to those core values and deciding who you want to be as a leader, but exactly what you just said. Have you communicated that to the group that you lead? So let's go back, right? When we start talking about the same issues across the board, we go back to the behavior, right? What do we do to build what can we do? What is our behavior doing to build social capital for us as the leader and for our organization for when things don't go the way that you want them to go? The idea that I'm actually, no, I'm not going to apologize for that. No. The thing is, we have to think about it that way, because we all are in a spot where you're going to have a very difficult conversation with somebody in the organization at some point. And when you have that difficult conversation, the way they walk out of that conversation is going to be determined by all of the social capital pieces of all the deposits you've made with that person leading up to that conversation, which then leads to the amount of distrust that goes on outside of that wall, which then leads to the amount of conversations that person has with the group that, that they're not, because they're not happy, which then determines how those people that they talk to react to the difficult decision that you made. And it all comes back to the deposits that you're making as a leader, which, as you just said, focused around, are you communicating to the group that you lead about the leader you want to be? And then you can be held accountable for that, because you've said it out loud, you communicated it to people, and you're going to live and lead through that, as opposed to 9 or 10 blanket statements, platitudes that you could put on a wall and they look fantastic, but there's no substance to what that goes on, because we're always just saying the right thing. We're always saying the thing that you heard in the press conference.
Yeah.
Come back to the what are your, and I don't know. I mean, I think we may, I don't want to say disagree on this, but I think when it comes down to it, less is more when it comes down to what these core values are, or where you lead from. I want to be a great communicator, and this is how I'm going to do it. I want to make sure that I build trust in the organization. This is how I'm going to do it. I'm going to be clear and transparent in the way that I lead. This is how I do it. And then that's it. That's it. You know, when we talk about, because you can throw community engagement under that, you can throw hiring under that, you can throw all of the things under that. But what are the 2 or 3 things, core values, core principles that you lead from that you can keep coming back to, so you don't feel like you're always all over the place? And it does 2 things. Like you say all the time, it slows you down. But the other thing is that it anchors you in decision making. So they don't have to be, they may not agree with it, but they know where it came from, which brings us right back to where we started, right? In terms of how are we making sure that people know and understand the transparency in which we lead, also knowing that they can't know everything, because a lot of that stuff is said behind closed doors, or decisions that are made at levels that we can't control.
Joe, what kind of car are you in this morning, out of curiosity?
I'm going to tell you this. I don't know what kind of car it is, but Jimmy, there's sand all over this thing, and I don't like it. Sand is nature's glitter, and I don't like glitter, and I don't like sand. There's a beautiful beach right there. I'm not going on it. It's sand. It gets everywhere, Jimmy. I don't know. I don't know what kind of car it is.
You know why I'm asking? Because the last 3-minute talk you just gave was beautiful, and I want you to bring that same car back, because I think the car is actually making you smarter, Joe. And maybe the glitter is like pixie dust. Maybe. I mean, I don't know. Maybe it is.
Glitter.
I know you hate glitter. You said that to me before. I think your favorite scene is in Footloose, when he does this little, like,
no,
this pops up Kevin Bacon.
My daughter is a junior now, and her friends were like, because they know I hate glitter too. And if I had stayed through their senior
awkward things you share with me, I hate glitter. What? Who hates glitter?
I do. They said that their senior prank was going to be to break into my office and put glitter everywhere, like everywhere. And I'm just going to be really honest, Jimmy. I would have quit. I just would have quit. I would have just been like, you know what? It's over. It's just over.
Well,
I'm not staying here.
Naomi Austin is no longer. She's not like you anymore.
What?
You got to remember that. Because she loves glitter. She loves sand. I mean, anybody loves the beach loves sand, Joe. Come on.
Nope. Glitter, no sand, nope. And it's the water's all so wet. It's like it's all over the place. Like, what are we doing?
That's right. Joe, you were seriously, just, I mean, I think exactly what you were just saying, right? I just kept nodding my head because it's so spot on. But it's just your own clarity, right, of how you see things. But I think that's one of the things we have to look at. I still think, I try to figure out these things and try to the type of leader you want to be. But I do think one thing that really effective leaders do is they have ability to influence.
Right.
I think the reason they're good at influencing, number one, is because they're always clear, but they always model also. Because what we say is what we model is what we get. A lot of what I kept hearing is, are we modeling that? Are we modeling that? And the reason we want to do that is because, well, what's the type of leader you want to be? Well, when I can model that, and I can do it in a transparent, vulnerable way, then maybe our teachers and our support staff will also tell you the type of teacher they want to be, the type of nurse they want to be, school counselor they want to be. And I keep going back to this modeling thing because it's so funny to me, because, I mean, I think a lot of people that I run across love Ted Lasso, right? That whole show, things. And one of the biggest takeaways from Ted Lasso you keep getting is this whole thing about curiosity, right? He has the whole dart scene about being curious. And then they have this whole thing, which is awesome, about the believe sign. And so you go into schools today, everywhere you see, you got these believe signs, right? And then I sit in a meeting and they're talking about, nah, I don't think kids can do that. What? That's what you're saying, right? That's what we talk about. The words on the wall, the behaviors. Yeah, something's not right. I want to walk into a school too, and I just want to walk in a school and it says, we are a school, gotcha.
You do.
I've never seen that word on the wall, but I see a lot of it happening in schools.
I agree.
I actually did it myself, right? And
I agree.
It's a reminder again that, that's why leadership is so hard sometimes, because I think we are at our most vulnerable when we're not just in a good place, in a good space. And that's because of a bazillion reasons. Everything from the emotional toll the job will take on you, the challenges, the pressure, the stress, all these types of things. Leadership is hard, and we know that. And that's why we love doing this show, because at least we get to come together and just hopefully just talking through it allows us to put things in perspective and reframe it, because we know this. Look, people, this is a tough type of leadership. Peaks, valleys, peaks, valleys, peaks, valleys, because that's the way every given day, for sure, every week and every month's going to look like every school year. So how do we stay more let's just stay steady? Because I mean, I don't know, Joe, I'll be honest, 22 years of principal, I think I'd have to say, I mean, I haven't counted it, but I bet at least half those years we were dealing with budget cuts.
Oh, for
and
sure.
You know what I learned at the very end? It all turned out okay.
Absolutely.
Okay. Doesn't mean we didn't go through difficult times. Doesn't mean we get beat up, but man, you still, in the end, I feel like we come out okay. And I think that's one of the things from experience you'll learn from it, is that you will get through it. And we want you to just keep walking into the mess and hold your head high and be proud of the work you're doing, but surround yourselves and continue to surround yourselves with people who hold you accountable for your own behavior. Focus on you. Focus on you. And the last thing I'll say, Joe, I'll turn it over to you, is just, you said it and you're right, because, and maybe I wasn't clear, and I don't think you were saying this, but when I was talking about, are you the transparent leader, the vulnerable leader, the leader with integrity, or the visible leader, whatever leader you want to be, is focus on the type of leader you're trying to be. Less is more.
Right.
Narrow your focus. Articulate that to people. Be very transparent. Share that, because you're going to need their help to be that type of leader, because it's almost like a self-accountability.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I think that's one of the things I loved about being in leadership, what I continue to love about being in leadership. And the more that we learn, is we begin to develop this entire, like, I don't want to call it a toolbox, but entire list. It's like we curate a list of all these attributes that we have observed other leaders model, that we admire, that we respect. And when we can build this huge list of different types of leadership components or attributes of leadership, then I think one thing that really, really great leaders do, that in the moment they need that attribute, they can grab it and be that person in that moment. They can be the calm leader. They can be the courageous leader. They can be, whatever that attribute is. It's like they have an ability to grab it and be that person right in that moment.
Right.
Because all those are important. But what we're saying is, what leader do you really want to be? So if I walked into your school and I asked every one of your staff members, they would say, oh man, I love my leader because she's transparent.
Right.
Or she's honest, or she's caring, or compassionate, empathetic, whatever it is, or I can trust her. That's what we want to be able to see. That will create
I think so. I agree with that to a point, and I think that's a great conversation for the next for next week, or whenever we get a chance.
No, I won't remember next week.
Well, I mean, honestly,
you bring that car back, okay? You bring that car back with the sand.
Right.
With the sand.
Listen, stop talking, because I got about 4 minutes until the sun takes this whole car over. So, but I think the reason, and the toolbox is probably a good analogy to it in this regard. If you open a toolbox, there's like different levels to it, right? And there's different shelves. There's maybe 3 shelves. In it. Those 3 shelves are like your core things. But within that, there's a bunch of little spaces in how to put stuff in. Maybe that's how you handle certain situations, right? And the reason that I say that is, if you want to be the calm, caring leader, but at sometimes but something happens where you get fired up, and all of a sudden, like, well, he was calm most of the time, but remember that one time when it didn't go the way that he wanted and he just flipped out, right? Now, all of a sudden, you got to come back and think about, are you leading from the place that you want to lead? And I think if we can I think you're absolutely right. So I think we're saying the same thing, but at the same time, it's like, what are your core pieces? Who do you want to be? And have you communicated that? So as you think about how you're leading this week, do you know your 2 or 3 core values and where you want to lead from? And secondly, have you communicated that? And third, what are the behaviors that show people that that's the type of leader that you want to be? In the hallway, in the classroom, in the office, in the meeting with the parent, in the, at the game, whatever it is, are you demonstrating what you want or how you want to be seen with all of your actions? And honestly, one of the things that we do with groups all the time, do an audit of your day, right? Yep. What do you do when you walk in to what do you do when you walk out? Everything inside. And then you take your 3 core principles and attach those to the things that you did throughout the course of the day. Were those 3 things seen throughout the course of the day, or were they not? And don't get on yourself if they weren't, but just figure out a way that they are the next day. And that'll make you feel better about the work, because that's actionable stuff that, again, like we started, Jimmy, all this stuff, what can we control? And we can control our behavior. And when we control our behavior leading up to a difficult situation, it's going to help determine the response to that difficult situation. I'm getting blown out, but look, watch this. Yep, there it is. There it is, Jimmy. You got nothing from me anymore, Jimmy. I'm out, Jimmy. So I gotta go. I gotta go.
Joe, I want you to do that again. You literally changed colors 3 times. Yeah,
Jimmy, you got done.
I felt like you just went from until you got like totally sunburned on one flip.
I know, I probably did. I probably did. Look at me. I'm dodging the sun all over the place. It's getting to be a little bit dangerous. Somebody's going to drive by and say, what's going on? Is he like boxing somebody? No, he's not. He's just trying to get away from the sun, Jimmy. That's all this is. Bad choice. Bad choice of places. What was I thinking? Get out. Wrap this thing up.
First of all, thank you, everybody, for joining us this morning. Joe, I hope you bring your car next week. Hey, let's everybody bring some glitter and sand to the party.
No.
And
if anybody sends me glitter, I swear to all that is holy. If you send me glitter, I will not open it. I will send it back to you. I promise I will. I promise I will.
Give me 1 second. I'm typing your address in the.
No.
Listen, everybody, thank you so much, Joe, thank you so much, my friend. Loved what you had to say. And one of the things Joe does say all the time, and he reminds me as well, and we've heard him talk about this, is people, sometimes I think we focus way, way too much on that to-do list. And we know that, and we know why you do it. But I think what Joe is saying, let's spend the time this week. Let's get back to that, the to-be list. What this type of leader do you want to be? So God bless everybody. Thank you so much. Thank you for joining the weekly show. We hope you share it out with your friends. Tell your friends about it. Join us not every Saturday. No, I don't even know why we call it the weekly show, Joe. We should call it the random show. The random weekend show.
That's a better hashtag. We can probably change that up. Let's go.
That's right. All right, my friends. Good luck. Have a great week. Love all of you. Until next time, be the change.